four-time presenter at the PRC, and she is an incredible resource to our military families. She's on staff as the family liaison with FCPS, so on the ground, serving our families. She is available for questions in real time as well as after things. You're welcome to put them in the chat, to send us messages. We are all here to support you in any way that we can. Stacy will be sharing a little bit about herself. But I also wanted to share with you that she has a wealth of background, and as an Air Force spouse, her husband has been in for 28 years as a freelance writer and advocate with a passion for military connected children and their families. She's dedicated the last decade to understanding the challenges military kids face when changing schools. And that brings us to today, where she'll be sharing about, as we wrap up the school year, as many people prepare for moves, what we can be doing to set ourselves up for success. And this is something that will be available on our YouTube channel later. So please do share it with your friends. And if you need a refresher, if this isn't a year of moving, but you have one later, this will be here for you, as will all of us, to serve as a resource. So thank you, Stacy, for being here today, and for all of you for joining us as well.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you very much to Fairfax County Public Schools Parent Resource Center. You guys are the bomb and just so amazing, so incredibly generous with your time and your resources, that we're really grateful that for parents out there that this exists. I think this is like a unicorn in some ways, because I don't think every school district has this. So thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. So, okay, let's get started. I'll tell you, as Erica just told you a little bit about myself, we're going to talk today. I'll give you a little bit of background, but most importantly, we're going to focus on school transitions for military families, the outgoing and incoming student, which is really what we do as military families. We change schools. So that's what we're going to focus on today, and maybe, hopefully, give parents out there some ideas of how to support their child a little bit better. So moving on, let's get out of here. All right. Let's see, there we go. Sorry. There we go. All right. As Erica alluded, my name is Stacy Allsbrook-Huisman, and I'm a military spouse. My husband has been in for 28 years. I'm a mother of two. We've moved 10 times, and we've moved 10 times, and my children have changed schools 6 to 7 times over a period of almost 2 decades of being married. So that tells you I've got a little bit of experience. We've lived in 6 different states and 2 countries. So I've experienced school transition across the pond and across state lines, which has been very interesting and a joyful adventure on top of it, but it's been very, very hard. And with that, I'm a journalist by background and by education. I'm a published book author. We're going to talk a little bit about the book I co-authored with my partner, Dr. Amanda Tremillis. It's covering seasons of my military students. It's about military school transition for kids, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. As she mentioned, I'm currently a family liaison at 2 elementary schools here at Fairfax County, working mostly with military connected youth, and I love it. It's one of my best jobs on the planet. I'm a former public affairs officer for the city of Las Vegas. I worked there for about 14 years prior to meeting my husband and moving across the globe. And I consider myself a subject matter expert in military connected students in public education. It's what I do, it's what I've been focused on, and it's what I'm most passionate about. So let's talk a little bit about seasons of a transition, which is a concept Amanda and I had come up with several years ago. The idea behind it is we believe that military connected youth go through what we call seasons of transition, which means they go through these different seasons every time they encounter a school move or a school change or a PCS. And what's different about this is that we like to follow the student, not the calendar year. So for instance, you could be at any time, doesn't matter if it's winter, spring, summer, or fall, you can be in any one of these transitions. And it's really kind of an interesting concept, and I think it really fits well for every single student, not only elementary school, but also for the students that are in high school. Everyone goes through what we consider a season of leaving, which is what we start with, which is when orders are about to be given, and we anticipate the move is coming. The season of arriving, which by the way, we're kind of in the season of leaving and we're about ready to hit the season of arriving, begins with preparation for that first day of school at the new school and continues through the very first parent conference, which usually happens within 2 to 6 weeks after school begins. Depends on where you are in the country, of course. And then we like to go into the season of growing. That's when we pick up. I'm sorry. I was looking at something else. The season of growing is when the student actually is starting to understand the gaps and overlaps in learning. It's also when they're starting to take a couple of chances, maybe some risks out there. And I don't mean social risks. I mean risks to themselves, but more risks like friendship risks, trying out for new clubs, starting to feel a little more comfortable. They're starting to understand the academics a little bit better. They understand their teachers, the school hallways. They know where the bathroom is in the school. They know exactly how to order lunch from the cafeteria. These little small things make a big difference. And this is where we are of the season of growing. And that goes all the way through what we consider full integration of the student, which is the season of thriving. This is what every single parent wants. They want their kid to thrive at a new location. And that is something when my co-author likes to say, when the student starts to wear the school colors and when the school starts to wear the student colors, which is, in my opinion, the month of the military child, when they understand the challenges the military family takes. So and then it starts all over again with the season of leaving, when you're starting to anticipate that next move. All I know is that I've done this at least 8 times, and I've felt every single one of these transitions. And if you're a military parent out there, I know you have to. I've explained it best, but I'm an audio and a visual learner too. So I'm going to go ahead and pop through a video that might help you guys. Sorry about that. Pop through a video that might help you understand it a little bit better. So bear with me. Here you go.
There are more than 1.5 million U.S. military kids. More than 60% are school age. Most military-connected students move 6 to 9 times from pre-K to high school graduation. Those moves can take place anytime during the school year. Academic, social, and emotional continuity is essential for all students at all levels. Students who live a mobile military life experience 4 seasons of transition as they leave behind a familiar school and enter a new school environment, acclimate to new teachers, classes, and friends, and integrate into a new school culture. Eventually, students begin to thrive in their new school community as they build self-confidence, explore passions, nurture deeper friendships, and develop resilience for the next transition. Storms of military life, such as deployment, injury, or loss, can happen in any season. The best support for military-connected students is a strong student advocacy team that includes the students' parents and teachers who understand the unique challenges of military life and their impact on a student's education. Other invested adults, such as coaches, counselors, and school liaison officers, can also be valuable team members. 3 key tools of cultivation enable the student advocacy team to effectively support a military-connected student: an understanding of military life and the seasons of transition, knowledge of the provisions of the Interstate Compact on educational opportunity for military children, a seasons education binder. Mobile military-connected students need both continuity and resilience to grow academically, socially, and emotionally. A strong student advocacy team is a student's greatest ally, supporting students through each move, season of transition, and military life challenge. Visit seasonsofmymilitarystudent.com to find helpful resources, articles, and to learn more about how you can help a military student in any season of transition.
All right. Sometimes it's always easier for me to see it and listen to it, and instead of being told by it. So thank you very much for indulging me in the video. Hope you guys have a better understanding of what the seasons of transition looks like and what it means. I want to talk a little bit about why we're here today, which is new school registration or school withdrawal process and the school withdrawal process. Each one of them land in the season. Well, let's say the registration is about season of arriving and withdrawal is about season of leaving. in your opinion, just getting out there, just think about it. Which one do you think is more difficult for parents? Is it withdrawing from school or is it the registration process? And and at the same time, think about what might be more difficult for students. Are they the same? There's no right answer. I'm just letting you think about what it feels like to be in both the parent role and the student role when it comes to a school transition. For me and my family, it's very interesting. I found that it's harder for my students, my kids, to say goodbye, to leave their support network, to leave everything behind. And they have such a fear of the unknown that I really truly believe that the withdrawal process is actually harder for them. But as a parent, it is more troubling for me to go into a new school with new rules, almost flying blind at a new location, trying to understand and advocate best for my kids. So I find the registration process very difficult for a parent, and I find that the withdrawal process is probably harder on the student. So that's just my family. Your family may be a little different too. And that brings us to what we're going to talk about, dive in, actually take a deep dive into Fairfax County Public Schools and military connected families and their withdrawal and registration process. Because I think that if you're listening to this, you have some questions about how that might work. Because every single school district, I'll remind everybody, education is run by state. And every single registration process and every school may vary a little bit different, but definitely from state to state, registration and withdrawal do differ. And we're going to talk about what happens right here in Fairfax County. But we got a special guest today. Her name is Meredith Ayala, and she is a family partnership specialist, but she's a little bit more than that. She actually is, she was brought on first because she's extremely qualified and she's got a passion like no other in the military, for military connected families and how to support them through Fairfax County Public Schools. And I will tell you, this is also kind of a unicorn thing. Not every school district has this particular job, this role within the school district. I mean, I think people are trying to understand it, but they're definitely ahead of the game, and it's important for everyone to know that this is Fairfax County Public Schools is kind of leading the charge. So anyways, thank you, Meredith. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that invitation, the invitation to be here today. As Stacy said, my name is Meredith Ayala, Family Partnership Specialist, and I have the honor in my role of supporting our military connected families, our military connected students, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's involved with that. My background myself, I was a military brat and I moved attended 9 different schools, K through 12. And my husband is a retired Marine. So this is a passion of mine as well. And I'm just so thankful to be in this role and thankful to be here today. So in my role, I touched on it. Definitely, I have the honor of acting as a support and a liaison for our military connected families and military connected students, as well as really supporting our schools and our educators in understanding the life experiences and the challenges that our military families and our military connected students face, and really working with our students, our schools, to develop that welcoming culture and that awareness of what it means to be a military family and be a military connected student. So I take that part of my job very, very seriously and enjoy connecting with families, with staff, with our school liaison officers, which we'll talk about. So just very fortunate to be in this role. Fairfax County does have, Stacy, do you want me to run through the questions on the screen?
You're doing awesome. So keep on going. You know what's coming, so I love it. So
okay, no worries. So Fairfax County does have 31 current Purple Star schools, but we've had 45 schools that have earned their Purple Star designation. Just really briefly, the Purple Star designation started in Ohio, and it really is Virginia was actually the second state to adopt this Purple Star designation for military friendly schools. So what does that mean? That means that the school is aware of the the challenges, the life experiences of our military families. There are certain designations, or there's certain requirements to become a designated Purple Star school, and that includes that the staff and faculty are being trained annually on military culture and military connected students, that there is a peer-led transition program to really support those new students when they come to the school, to get them connected as soon as possible to that school. And it's so much different when a peer reaches out when you move into a school versus just the faculty and staff. But again, that school really is doing the work, and they're committed to understanding deployments, homecomings, all these different things that our military families may face, as well as understanding the resources that are available to families and having an understanding of the compact, which was mentioned in the video, and some of the other resources around the county.
And Meredith, I'm just going to jump in here because I think it's important that they understand that when we travel across the country and we go to the day of schools overseas and things like that, because you're military friendly doesn't mean you understand military families. And I think the Purple Star designation really kind of makes them go through more than just a paper program. That I like to say that it really does, they have to show the work. And I think that's important. So if anyone's listening out there who doesn't really understand what that means, like Fairfax County, you have to show the work and you have to re-up every 3 years. And it's not a short process.
I'm so proud of working with our schools. Thank you for that information. Like, I've been so proud working with our schools that it is not just a check in the box and going through the motions, that our faculty and our staff and our students that are involved in this Purple Star designation really want to support our families and our students academically, as Stacy was saying, with gaps and overlaps as they're transitioning, socially and emotionally supporting our students as they transfer. So really just committed, like you said, Stacy, to doing the work.
Great, thank you. And so as we get into we're talking about this, Meredith, the withdrawal process. Tell us a little bit about, as you can, you're reading the question on the screen. Is there anything that we should know, military families out there? What would you tell them if they're about ready to pull up chalks and leave?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think as soon as you know that you are leaving, just communicating that with the teachers, with the school as soon as possible. If you do know where you're going, providing that new school information as well. But I think really just communicating as soon as possible to the schools so that they can support that transition on many levels. So that would help with requesting records. So you want to make sure that you are hopefully closing out grades before being able to close out grades before you leave, and then requesting those records, those transcripts, possibly having the teacher, if you give them enough time, to write a teacher letter, where that teacher can then explain just how your child did in their classroom and their strengths and their rooms for growth, and you can take that with you. So including that in those transcripts and records is just wonderful. As Stacy touched on, those goodbyes are so important to our students. So again, letting that school know and those teachers know as soon as possible, so that there's opportunities for those farewells, to attend those ceremonies and really to say goodbye before they move on. I am so fortunate in my role that I work very closely with the school liaison officer. And I would say that she would say, if you let the school liaison officer know as well, then they can make an installation to installation connection and really help with that transition as well. So that Kristen Aqua works very closely. We work very closely together to really support the transition of all of our military families. So that is another person that can help with that piece for sure.
And I want to say too, I know for military families out there, we kind of like to hold the moving part close to our chest, because sometimes people treat us differently when we move, they know we're not going to be around. We don't get the party invites. We don't get to play on the soccer team. There are things like that. But I think that we're very hesitant and we're very protective of our kids. But it's different with the school. This is a procedure. This is a handoff. This is something that's a little bit more formal. So I would encourage you to talk to the school, maybe tell them to keep it to themselves. But it's something important that you know that this is a school to school transition will be better if you give yourself enough time. You don't have to tell your best friend down the street, but you do need to tell the school when you're leaving. Anyway, so I wanted to put that out there because I think it's really scary for people to tell others that they're leaving before they're ready, but the school is the person and the teacher. You're right, Meredith, they need to know. And just moving into the high school stuff, because I think it's important. Every school district has a different policy when it comes to actually receiving credits when you can withdraw, especially mid-year moves, which I need to make sure people understand. There are dates for both spring and winter, right, Meredith?
For spring and winter
if you're going to move out of the school district, there's a certain date that you cannot withdraw your student and not receive credit. And I think that's always something worry for parents. They want to be, the orders can come in February. Okay, does that mean that you get the credits or not credit? So
right.
I was going to have you talk a little bit about.
No, for sure. I appreciate that question. And that is something, as far as in Fairfax County, the last day families can withdraw from, if we're looking at, again, the secondary classes, from a year-long class is 15 days before the end of the school year. So that's a year-long class. So this year, for example, in Fairfax County, it was May 20th. Now, with that said, I would say that schools will really work with our families depending on the circumstances. So really that's where that awareness piece and that communication with the schools and with the school counselors. I was a former school counselor, and many times I would reach out if I knew that next school, so we could do some of that supporting for the student and with the family. So absolutely.
Thank you very much. I think that's exactly what we needed to hear. 15 days is important. And the fact that you're willing to work, especially a Purple Star school is willing to work with a family is great. Okay, so let's talk about jump into the season of arriving, which is the registration process. A lot of families who probably are going to be listening to this, maybe over the summer on the YouTube channel, will discover, because they're scouring the internet for any morsel they can find about Fairfax County and registration and the little insights, the inside scoop, I like to call it. So anything you want to tell us about the registration process for Fairfax County? Are they all the same at all the schools, Meredith?
Sure. So I think you touched on it before. So they are not all the same. So not all registration processes are the same state by state. So Fairfax County is a very large system with almost 200 schools and centers and 180,000 students. So in Fairfax County, where you physically live determines what school that your children will go to. So where you're physically living determines that zone school is where your students will enroll. Now, in the state of Virginia, there is a law that allows families, if they're living on a military installation, to attend a school of choice. So that is an option, but that would involve first registering at your zone school and then applying for a transfer to that school of choice. And so that law covers, again, if you're living on a military installation, then again, registering at that base school first, and then you can apply for a transfer. So really in Fairfax County Public Schools, if you're already living here, let's say you're already here, and you do have a permanent residence, or you have a letter as to when you're moving into that home, then you can gather all of your documents. So actually on the website, there are a registration bundle, which includes all the paperwork, and it lists all the documents you might need, such as that proof of residency, birth certificate, and health information and immunizations. And you fill out that information, and you can actually register right at that school. So you can actually register right at that school that you will be attending. Go ahead, Stacey.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that is important for people to know that you need to physically have, if you want to go to a school, you have to physically be in that area. And even though you want, the problem, I think it's so tough. I think it's just a really meaningful conversation right now, is because the housing market is insane right now. And a lot of military families are making multiple bids on homes and trying to do rental properties, and they are just scattered all over the all over this place because they really are they're having trouble finding that home. So, and that of course, leads right into, oh my gosh, what school are they going to attend? So this is really good information. And I know I didn't say this to you, Meredith, and I'm sorry for not saying this out loud before, but I was gonna, what if they're in temporary housing? I don't know if you know that. If you don't know that, that's okay. We can just go on to the next question. But if you're in temporary housing, or if you are renting an apartment, or if you are in a hotel because you haven't been able to secure a home yet, do you know by chance how a military family would work with Fairfax County Public Schools?
And I'll tell you, I appreciate this conversation because the school liaison officer and I, as well as the student registration, talk about this so frequently about how we can possibly limit the transitions for our students and for our families. Because we are such a large system, if you are currently in temporary housing, it would be registering at that school where your temporary housing resides. Then you can, once you have registered at that school, you can apply for a transfer. But you have to, so if you have an idea or you're waiting on the ability to move into that next location, you can apply for a transfer through the transfer office. But you do need to first register at that school of where you're living.
And that makes sense. And I do know some families, if you're out there and you're listening, I do know some families who chose not to register their children until they actually secured a home, only because it limits the transition, between a hotel and, changing schools multiple times. But I will be honest with you, the housing market has been such a troublesome and problematic for military families over the last 2 years that, if it could be a while before you get that secure housing. So just consider sometimes being at school is a safe place to be, and it keeps them engaged. So Meredith, I also want just really quick, I know advanced enrollment is something that not every state does, but Virginia does. So tell us a little bit about that.
No, absolutely. So the state of Virginia does allow advanced enrollment 120 days before that you would be here. So once a family does get orders or an official letter from that service member's command, they can reach out to the student registration office and begin that registration process. If you have at that point a permanent address, so you happen to know where you're going to be moving, then you can go through that registration process and end up enrolling in that school if you have proof of that address. If you don't have a place to live yet, which we absolutely understand, you can still go through that advanced enrollment with those orders, and then you would be placed in it's actually the Mount Vernon pyramid. So that's Mount Vernon, Whitman, and then Fort Belvoir Elementary. But that does allow you to get in the system and get the student ID number and have access to many resources.
Okay, that's amazing information. Honestly, I don't think people understand that because and I don't think a lot of registrars know that either, that advanced enrollment does take place, that it does happen. And if you are listening to this and you do have a question about this, it's okay to call this, call us, we'll help you. Fairfax County Public Schools is open all summer. The schools may not be, but we can actually, answer these questions and help you get to the right place and give you the resources you need. But this is great information, Meredith. I can't tell you, it's so valuable to have you on here to talking to families and answering these kind of minutia questions. But we're in the weeds when it comes to transition, and this is great information. So I really appreciate you being on today.
No, thank you so much. And if you do go to the FCPS webpage, and go to military families, my connection to my email is right there. So do not hesitate. I can also put it in the chat, but please do not hesitate to send me an email with any questions. If I can't answer them, I can at least find out the answer and get you connected to resources.
All right, well, and that's the truth. So don't be shy. She'll respond to you. She's amazing, and she's here to help, not hinder. Help, which is something military families. It's like a code word. We know. Okay, well, thank you very much. We're gonna, sorry, I hope you stay on with us, Meredith, because you might have some questions in the back that maybe you can help answer, but want to move on to the presentation and jump in anytime too. I love conversation, as you can tell. So, all right, So as you know, we're in the season of leaving right now. So that is creating healthy and a healthy departure socially, emotionally, and academically through the withdrawal process. And what does that mean? That just means, finding ways to support them as they go through the transition. So how do we do that? I'm going to touch briefly on an education binder, which is something near and dear to my heart. And I advocate this till I'm blue in the face. And there's a reason why, is because this is, to me, the most important thing a parent can have for their child. And especially if you move as often as we move. Why is that? Because an education binder will grow with your child from kindergarten to the day they graduate and beyond. It is a place where parents can stay organized. It's a place where you can see what you're missing. It's just one of those documents, binders that you're going to hand carry with you through every move. It's just really important. Now I've gone through this a lot through the other presentations, which are located on the YouTube channel. So I'm not going to do too much, go into this as a deep dive, but I'm going to put this up on the screen and just point out some really, some things I think are important. Education binder provides history and continuity, not only as a parent, but also information for schools, counselors, and teachers to know. It's a great way to be able to tell your child's story when a single transcript in a Cume file doesn't actually do that justice, especially if you've had homecomings, injuries, you've had a death in the family. There's all kinds of interesting things that you can make notes on a piece of paper and a child transcript and a binder that a Cume file is not going to have. It's a great place, like Meredith has touched briefly on, to get a teacher-to-teacher letter. What does that look like? I'll give an example. So when we were moving from Florida to Virginia, Fairfax County, and we were actually in a pandemic, and it was a very tough move. But before I left, I made sure that his teachers that he was excelling in, my son, when he was in 8th grade, he had 3 subjects that he really loved: science, English, science, math, not English. We'll talk about that later. But science, English, and history, civics. So one of the things that we did is I had his science teacher write a letter of recommendation, or just like, hey, this is Eric. This is what he's really good at. This is what this is his strengths. These are his weaknesses. Yeah, I recommend him. He's a great kid. If you need any more information, reach back to me. Well, we moved here, and immediately Science Olympiads came up as his first year in high school. And it said you needed a teacher recommendation in order to get in. Well, we just moved here. He doesn't know anyone. Teachers don't know him. In fact, the screens aren't even on. How is he supposed to get a letter of recommendation? I mean, it's one of those things that will send a panic through any parent who had just moved, because your kid is going to miss out on something else. And we feel responsible. It's an emotional toll parents take on themselves. The guilt is crazy, but we can't help it. But we can through something what I just described. Because what I did is I pulled that little letter out, I scanned it as a PDF, and I sent it in. And whether or not it worked or not, it made me feel better, and it gave Science Olympiads coach a little bit of insight on maybe my son's strengths in science. So that's a little example that we want to do before we move, to be able to use those. And those can grow throughout a child's life. It can help them sit. Little Johnny does better in the front row than he does in the back. Little Johnny has an amazing reading level, but maybe struggles a little bit in writing. We can also do this in terms of job experience, volunteer hours. This is where mom, dad, this is where we track the continuity of our child's education through a binder like this. Because when you show up at a new place, people are already well into their lives, and they expect you to know or have this information, even though we have no idea what club this is. We have no idea how the volunteer hours are tracked. And it's yet another system for us to memorize. Schoology, Blackboard. I mean, I can't even tell you how many of these systems I've gone through. I've had to upload things where I'm like, I don't even know my password. I don't even know my student's ID. It changes every other year. This is a great place to put all this information in. And I have an exhaustive list of things for you guys to look and learn. And if you need more information, I'm always available, and I can help you build one if you need one. So That's the education binder, and I hope I described to you why you need it, because I really am very passionate that parents use this tool. Another part of the seasons of leaving is keeping those connections, because they really do matter. And I'll give you another example. There's the friendship side, which is the social and emotional side. And then of course there's the academic side, which to me is like the schools and the coaches, not coaches in school. I mean the coaches like and instructors through dance or ballet or music or sports. I'm talking about those. This is why it's important, and also school employees. For the friendship side, keeping those connections, because as a military parent, you know that the summer can be very lonely, especially if your active duty member has to get right to work. I can't remember how many times I've showed up at a new location and my husband had been like, "Love ya, but see ya. I got to go to work." He puts on his uniform and he's gone for 12 hours, and I'm stuck looking at boxes and two little kids trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? What I have found over the past, especially recently through the teens and tweens years, and I will tell you it's very useful for the younger ages as well, is that keeping these connections are important. They're the bridge that so a child doesn't feel isolated. It allows them to feel validated. It allows them to be seen by their old friends. It reminds them who they are by talking to them. So it's important for parents to help cultivate those relationships online. Unfortunately, whether you like it or not, that's where we are. Social media for the older kids, messaging apps and texting for the youngers, and even online games such as like Animal Jam, and sometimes people like to play the Roadblocks and a couple other ones that they can still keep in contact with their friends from their past assignments. They're ones they just left. And a quick but important story is, I will say, when we moved to the pandemic, my son in particular moved into his first year of high school and he knew no one. Screens were black. High school did not look like what his high school experience was supposed to look like his freshman year. Yet in the state that we just moved from, everyone had gone back to school. He had not. Virginia or Fairfax County, we did not go back into the classroom, but in Florida they did. And it's just a different environment. Again, state is run by the education is run by each state. What I found for him is that if he hadn't kept and nurtured those relationships from his past and kept them over the summer, we would be having a very, very different conversation today about the direction of the mental health of my son. He was very alone, and being able to reach back and connect with those friends, even through silly games online or anything else, was his only lifeline for peer-to-peer relationships. It was tough. So it's important as parents to really make that happen and make that a priority, because that's the bridge that's going to help them transition from their friends, existing friends, into getting new friends. It's going to give them the self-confidence too. It's important also to grab the registrar's phone number and card, because you're going to need that person when you move into a new location, because a couple of things, you may not have an address yet. And if you don't have an address yet, you've got to be able to tell the registrar where to send your records, your CUME file. You've got to be able to tell them. And a lot of registrars don't realize that when we move, we don't have an address. We don't know sometimes we don't know where you can send, what school we're going to register for. So, and sometimes we need to be on the ground first before we make that decision. And so you need to make sure you have that stuff, those contact information. Make sure you have your coaches, instructors, and even a teacher contact. You can reach back and ask a couple of questions. These are important. Teachers are always willing to help. Most, their busy schedule, they care about your kid at the end of the day, and they want to be able to help. So those are important. So keep those connections. The season of leaving, it's about making time for goodbyes. Don't just pull chocks and leave. Make sure your kid is able to say goodbye and nurture those connections that we just talked about. It's important that before you leave, you reach out to the new school. If you do know where you're moving, just kind of ask for questions, ask for the website, ask for parent pages, ask for the PTO contacts. There's a lot of things you can do. School liaisons, as Meredith touched on, super important. They are different than they were 10 years ago. So if you're I'm going to say veteran, I'm not going to say older, veteran spouse like I am, you know that school liaisons were different 10 years ago. they have made an enormous amount of progress and push to be able to unify and unite school liaisons across the country. It is a beautiful process, and even though in the beginning it was personality dependent, that is not what I see now. So use them; they are there for you. You just have to be able to, and there's no such thing as a silly question. So just ask it. One last thing, if we go through this, project the positive. When things are getting tough during the season of leaving, whether it be emotionally, academically, or just physically, because moving is physically takes a toll on you, especially through a pandemic. I will say it's important your kids are watching. Project the positive as much as you can, because if you're handling it, they'll handle it. If you are breaking down, they will see this as something much bigger and much harder for them as well. So because if mommy hurts and this is tough on mommy, then it's got to be tough on them too. So just remember, project as much positive as you can. Give them space to be sad. And for those we talked about mid-year moves, you might be moving in October because that is another season. And people move in February. That's another part of the PCS cycle. It's the off summer cycle PCS. All these things I'm telling you are important for you to know this as well, because they all will be effective during your moves. And of course, the education binder, give them space to be sad. Your kids, it's okay for them to be sad. I'm sad for them. It's give them space to feel that way. Don't tell them to ignore it and move on. Of course, you know this. You moms know this. Dads know this. We know this. Here's the last thing, hand carry your records. For the same reason I told you before, you don't know where you're moving. The MIC, the compact, says you can hand carry your records and give them to the school. They can take them as a substitute until the official transcript comes in. It's important families have this because so much happens. There's so much chaos during a move, so much. The registrar may not know that you are allowed to do that. It's important for you to gently remind them that you can, but more importantly, respect their time at the end of the school year. You are not the only one moving, and there are a ton of things happening for registrars out there. This is their busiest time of year. So make sure you give them plenty of time to be able to make copies of your school records. Respect their time just as much as you want them to respect yours. Okay, I'm gonna let you hear this video. It's about the compact. We just talked about that in terms of being able to hand carry your records. We're gonna go over, I'm gonna play this video so you understand a little bit more about what the compact does and does not cover, because it's important that you know both. So here we go.
Imagine if you change jobs every few years and your new job is always slightly different. This may cause you to fall behind because you were not fully able to master your position before you move on. This is a similar experience for the average military-connected student. Military families usually move every 2 to 3 years, and for school-aged military children, this presents unique challenges. They are nearly always the new student as soon as they start to feel comfortable with their teachers, the curriculum, and have made new friends. It's time to move. From one duty station to the next, from one school to another, they travel across the country and around the world. They experience different time zones, climates, and cultures. In addition to the upheaval associated with moving, military-connected students face obstacles that can make it hard for them to transition smoothly into new classrooms. Many of these center around a few key issues such as course enrollment, placement, eligibility, and graduation. The Interstate Compact was designed to address these challenges and smooth the path for military students as they transition to new school districts and states. The Compact is an agreement that has been signed into law by all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Its provisions are intended to aid military-connected children through their academic transitions by providing a comprehensive approach to the different policies in every school district and state. Developed by the Council of State Governments, the Department of Defense, national associations, federal and state officials, departments of education, school administrators, and military families, this was truly a joint effort to help address the transition issues of military-connected students. Each state appoints a commissioner to the compact. This person acts as the representative for their state, which also appoints members to a state council led by the commissioner. The council is tasked to oversee the implementation of the compact within their state. Those who qualify are children of active duty members of the uniformed services, National Guard and Reserve on active duty orders, commissioned officers of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the United States Public Health Services. It also covers families of members that perish for a period of 1 year following their death, as well as members or veterans medically discharged or retired for 1 year. The compact applies to public and Department of Defense schools, kindergarten through 12th grade. For more information, visit www.mic3.net.
There you go. So hopefully that gave you, again, for me, it always gives me a little bit of a better understanding when I see something visually. I can understand it better. And again, at the very bottom, it said for veterans who are retiring. So the MIC3, the compact itself will cover you if you retire and move to a new location up until a year after your retirement. So that's important for people to know out there as well. So, okay. We're going to quickly go through the season of arriving, which is, when the registration process, what we were just talking about, the minute you show up to your new location. These are things that teachers and parents should be thinking about, which is, of course, aiming for success, right? So you want to be able to prepare your student for the new school. Teachers, you want to be able to prepare the classroom for incoming students, right? That's what we do. And you want to be able to introduce new students to peers. And Meredith talked about it briefly earlier when we were speaking to her about Fairfax County Public Schools and their their school-wide push to create student ambassador or peer-to-peer student programs for incoming students. That's what we're talking about right there, is to be able to introduce students to their peers. So before school begins, this is kind of a big list, so I'm going to go over it. It's important that you understand each part of this, so here we go. And why? The compact, we just talked about that, what it covers and what it does not cover. I'm going to say this to parents who are listening out there. It is more important for you to understand the compact better than the person you need to explain the compact to. So it is up to you to understand what it covers in your scenario, in your situation, and what it will not. I've heard parents walk in or on Facebook pages and groups, they say, oh, well, that's covered by the compact. It's not. It's important. It's very specific, it's very narrow. It's designed not to give us a leg up, but an even playing field. So know how the compact, how it pertains to you and what it covers. So, okay, before school begins, you want to register as soon as possible. Why is that? Because you want to get on the email list. You want to understand what's going on, the popsicles on the playground, the new student orientations, the things like that. You want to be able to get that on the calendar as soon as possible, so your student, your kid, it gets excited for those things. You want to build the adventure. You want to get the social, emotional side off the couch and into the forward. And so being able to put these things on the calendar is super important. Okay, special education. We could do an entire webinar on special education. So it's important that I just mention it here. But again, like the compact, parents, it's important for you to understand your child's 504 and IEP down to every last little detail. And you want to be able to explain and understand what services your child is getting. So when you meet with the SPED folks at your new school, that you can talk to them in a way that you understand and that they understand where you're coming from. Here in Fairfax County, the Parent Resource Center has people designed in place right now just to help parents understand and communicate their 504 IEP. So if you have any questions about Fairfax County Public Schools and you have a 504 and IEP, I implore you to call to reach out to the Parent Resource Center, which is who is hosting this today. So, okay, school calendar. I'm going to tell you a little story about the school calendar and why it's important to know. Okay, here's my story, because you guys are going to laugh, but it says what military families go through. So I was moving from Texas to Ohio, and I got a house and I registered both my children. My daughter was going into kindergarten. Finally, I was going to go back to work. My son was, of course, going into the first grade. And I get the calendar and I see their school calendar and I see first grade has a fabulous year ahead of them. And kindergarten has a fabulous year ahead of them, but every other day is shaded. And I don't understand. So I'm thinking maybe that's like a special day. Every other day is shaded, right? No. I didn't realize that in kindergarten, especially where I was moving, I had no idea, had never heard that kindergarten was only funded part-time. So my child was only going to go to kindergarten every other day and every other week a half day. That's understanding the school calendar. I was dumbfounded. I did not go back to work because I couldn't. And I don't know if I would have moved into that school district knowing that they only funded kindergarten part-time. So keep that in mind. You want to understand your school calendar. I did end up moving there. It was a great experience, but oh my goodness, I really needed to go back to work. I needed some space, but okay. Anyways, the school calendar, it's important you understand the days in which schools start, but also the battle rhythm of the school year, religious holidays, or I would say religious observance days are days that are more unique here at Fairfax County than I was in other locations that I've been. So it's important for you to know what those days are, and you can plan around it. Summer office hours for the school is important. Registration requirements, as Meredith said, for Fairfax County, it's right there on the website, everything you need, plus someone to help you navigate it if you need to, if you're a military family. Appropriate placement. Registering ahead of time allows you to kind of to understand the placement process, be able to talk to a counselor, because the counselors are essentially the ones who are going to be placing your child into classes. And if you are a parent of a teen or a tween, this is important because not every, especially when it comes to high school credit classes and maybe acceleration, and also other helpful classes out there, they don't necessarily connect, right? So it's important that you talk to a counselor and you get them enrolled so you can start negotiating is not the right word, but you can start to have a conversation about the placement and to start with the education binder explaining where you came from and what you believe your child needs. There's also a chance that you can also speak to a grade level teacher. So if your child's going into 4th grade at a new school, it's okay to ask if you can speak to a 4th grade teacher. It doesn't have to be the one that your child's going into, but it'll at least give you an idea of what the year might look like. There's student ambassadors, which is that peer-to-peer transition program that student-led transition program that Fairfax County is really, public schools really trying to get in every school, thanks to Meredith. This is so important. I just can't tell you. This sometimes can make or break a trajectory of a student in the beginning of the school year. So if look for that, ask for that. Sometimes it's done within the school, but it's also sometimes done on the PTA or PTO or PTSO, depends on where you are. School playgrounds, if you have a child, go play on the playground before school starts. Let them see, let them feel the school, let them get used to the school and the playground and go to the events. I think that's an important part of this process. Understanding the credit, how to transfer credits, that's important. I will have just an example from a friend of mine, moved from a foreign country. Daughter was in an American school, not located on a base, but was a foreign attaché, active duty military, showed up here, was so overwhelmed as a senior, poor sweet girl. She was a senior. She was getting she was going through American school through the IB program, but it didn't transfer. The math didn't transfer. And as a senior, she had to take 3 math credits. That's just hard. It's just hard for families. My heart broke for her because, they were just so overwhelmed by the boxes and the cultural shock of moving back and starting school right away that they really didn't get they just didn't get the advocacy that they needed, or did they understand? They just didn't have the brainwidth or the bandwidth to do it. So just keep in mind the credit transfer process can be tricky. So if you're listening out there and you're an administrator, just have some kindness and some flexibility. If you're a parent out there, bring your patience and know what needs to happen. And that can all be put into the education binder where you can gather your thoughts in a more succinct way and be able to tell your child's stories as best as possible. Quickly, it's important for you to find your community after the move. That's not just for you, but that's also for your child. And sometimes you just have to leverage the social media, whether you like it or not. That's where a lot of communication happens, through spouse groups, squadron-based unit, dig deep. There's FRGs and Airman Family Readiness Centers. There's there's places where you need to go just to connection points. I always like to say, like, I want to cast like a huge net, and I might get, 1 or 2 hits. But those are things that I need. Religious groups out there, whether it be your church, your synagogue, your temple, it doesn't matter. Your mosque, you find, maybe connect that way with your kids. Meet your neighbors. Don't stay inside. I will tell you, I actually went out. I mean, you can do whatever you want to, but I actually, as soon as I see a neighbor move in, I send a little note with my information, my ages of my kids. And, if you ever need anything, I'm happy to be your emergency contact. I do this for people because I know what it's like to be sitting in my house by myself and not knowing anyone, and I don't have anyone to put down as emergency contact. So if you're listening out there and you're not a military family and you see someone move in, just help them, help them, help them, help you, help them. Also find the hotspot. When we were in, what location were we in? I'm going back to this one. Yes, we were in Florida. There was a hotspot, like a place where all the teens gathered. And it was a great place for me to be able to send my teen, watch them, to go have lunch. He got to see other kids, familiar faces. And if you know anything about friendship is made by multiple points of contact over a period of time. It is not just a one-time meet and greet. So you kind of got to get out there. It's time to get uncomfortable, folks. Yes, you introverts unite. You have to get uncomfortable. And more importantly, you have to say yes. Just say yes to invitations, classes, anything. Just say yes. Trust me, a yes will always lead to something more. Okay. So at that, there was a couple of questions that came from the inbox. So we'll go over them as best I can. Meredith, I don't know if you're still on, but I'd love your information if you wanna chime in. How do you find the resources and contacts at your new location before you arrive? Okay. Well, after this slide, I'm going to give you a lot of resources. You're going to take a picture of that resources, take a picture of it, or I think Erica might be able to send it to you if you're registered for this. We can send you them on the email links. But okay, you want to be able to use the internet, obviously, as your main tool. It's okay to pick up the phone and make some phone calls. But the resources, one is going to be at your school district, and then your sub answer is going to be at the school you want to go to. It's going to be at your installation. It's going to be the school liaison. And more importantly, it's going to be your FRG, your Airman Family Readiness Centers, your Navy groups, your Marine families. You need to be able to find the word of mouth resources just as much as you're going to be able to find the official ones. So that's how you're going to be able to find that stuff. When should a family liaison meet up after a family registration? After they register, I'm assuming you're talking about what I do, which is a family liaison for schools. And what I do personally as a family liaison is the first thing I do as soon as they register, I get their email and their phone number, and I send them a welcome invitation that says, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do. I can help you connect with understanding Fairfax County Public Schools, but I can also help you connect with stuff in the community. So I become that person who helps them understand where you can go for after school classes, what are the sports around their neighborhood. I have a whole list of resources that I'm able to help them. That's what a family liaison should do. And then that's what I'd say as soon as they register, because that's when they need it. And then I follow up within 3 weeks after my first conversation to see how they're doing. Next question. It's my understanding that most states assign elementary schools to grade based on age. Are transcripts from previous schools necessary when moving to a new elementary school? Well, that is a really interesting question, because the bottom line is no, it's not. Depends on the age, but it's not necessary always. But my question to you is, why would you not want to have them? Why would you not want a documentation from the school? Some schools just want to make sure your child has been in school and doesn't show up for the first time in the 4th grade. So there's some, if you're talking kindergarten, every state is different in education. Some require schooling, I want to say, I used to know like at least 5 of these states, but some states require school to begin 1st grade. Some require kindergarten. Some require kindergarten or optional. Some require they must be in school by second grade. Beginning of second grade, they must be registered. So each state is different. But my question to you is, why do you not want these transcripts from a previous school? Is it the policy? Is it the procedure of getting them? Or are you not wanting to bring something from a previous school forward? So that's something that you're welcome to, I'm happy to help you talk that through. But I would say that depending on the age of the child, especially if they're older, yeah, I think it is necessary. You got to be able to show where your child came from. And if they're younger, it's possibly optional. What are some helpful resources for families? Well, I'm going to get to that in the next slide. I got you covered. Getting school records. Okay, well, that's through the registrar's office, and that's in the registrars at your local school that you went to. And I'm telling you, your registrar right now, her hair is on fire. His or her hair is on fire. So demanding something right now is not awesome. But they'll get to it. A good registrar has a list running beside on a notepad beside them, but they will get to it. But if you want school records, it's a school registrar is where you need to get it from. And you can always, if you're military, ask for hand carried records, but just give them time, girl, just give them time. Please give them time. Okay. Is the summer slide real? What is the summer slide? That is when traditionally children check out for the summer and they lose a couple hundred points of Lexile when reading and they forget what math they did. Yes, it is real. And it can happen, especially when you're transferring from one school district to another school district. One maybe do Common Core, one maybe doesn't. One maybe does a host language in another country, one doesn't. So it's important for your child for you to just not let the wheels go off the car, and important that you guys keep on, they just keep maintaining. They don't have to gain, just maintain what they have. So they have the confidence, the self-confidence to walk into a new school knowing that they are okay academically, because we all will tell you that the academic part is a big part of their self-esteem, and we want to be able to give support with what we can. So there's lots of different things we can do, but yes, the summer slide is real. So with that said, I'm going to jump on here, and here is a list of my favorite resources. I didn't do the mental health stuff on this slide. There's just too many. I wanted just to focus on what we were talking about today, which is the registration and the withdrawal process. First at the very top is the school liaisons. I can't reiterate that enough. Military One Source is the actual official spot for EFMP and me, which if everyone is out there, if you are not a military family, I'm going to really quickly describe what EFMP is, which is Exceptional Family Member Program. So if you have an IEP, if you have asthma, if you see a specialist, if you see a dermatologist, if you see anything that was referred outside of your normal medical doctor for any type of diagnosis that requires any specialty, a military family is registered into EFMP and cannot get out of this vortex for a long. It's very tough for us to get out of it. So for instance, if we're registered in EFMP, we cannot. So there are some military bases we will our active duty spouses cannot be assigned to, because they will not have the resources at that center to help us. So it could be if a mother has breast cancer, they don't have. It's a very small area, and there's medical specialties are with outside 50 miles. Even though it's my spouse's next line of where they need to go, in terms of for him or her to be able to get their next rank, it doesn't matter. We will not be assigned there. We will either have to geo-batch, which is live separately, or we'll have to change this whole assignment. So EFMP for a lot of folks triggers us. It does. So just know that that's an official source. And below is Partners in Promise, which is founded by another military spouse. Her name is Michelle Norman. She's a Navy spouse, and she is amazing. She has a personal experience that prompted her, like we all do, to have this happen. So that's something I want you to Google when you get a chance as a parent to know that. The Parent Resource Center here at the FCPS will also be able to help you with the IEP 504s and special education. So that's kind of your go-to right there. Everything else on here, I think most people know. Here at Fairfax County, there are military family life counselors that are assigned into particular schools. Like the one I work at has a full-time, and she's amazing. Oh my gosh, she's totally awesome. I know that they can be personality dependent where you live, but I will tell you, so far I've had nothing but a great experience with the ones that I know, and that's something you can. They provide lunch bunches, they provide deployment help, homecoming help. If you're having trouble transitioning, they do peer-to-peer stuff. So they're all kinds of great stuff. The other one I wanted just to briefly, of course, my group, Seasons of My Military Students, it's for parents, teachers, invested adults, advocates. We all come together. It's a place where we can talk about military connected issues in public education. So feel free to join that if you'd like to. The PTA has a liaison, basically it's an advocacy like arm of the PTA here in Virginia and Florida, by the way, that just support military connected families. It's amazing. Seriously, the PTA is strong here in Virginia, so keep that in mind. I was gonna say, Bloom for teens. Okay, so Bloom is this a group of teens that started a website and a blog that has turned into now a national survey sponsored by the National Military Family Association. But it's a place just for military teens, for military teens, written by military teens, and run by military teens. So if you have a teen or tween out there, I would definitely look into that one. Military Kids Connect is also something similar to that, but for smaller, for younger age groups. So I hope I was able to give you what you need today. I'm always available to answer more questions. This is the resource of the book I'm referring to in the beginning of this by Dr. Amanda Tamillis, who I didn't mention and I should. She is amazing, and she also has her doctoral in education, and she worked with just professional development of educators about military connected kids, and we've done a study together of maps. I could go on forever, but I won't, because I want to tell you, if you need more information, you can always reach out to me. My name is Stacy Allsbrook-Huisman, and this is the website. So anyways, thank you guys very much. I thank you for being with us today. I don't know if there's any questions or not, Erica. I'm happy to go through them. If not, we can wrap up and have a wonderful school year.
Thank you, Stacy. I hope y'all are getting the impression that there are so many people out there that are passionate about supporting you, and especially within the FCPS community and this area, we are really fortunate to have the resources. And if we don't know the answer, we will help find someone who does. And we understand that things can change frequently, and that can be a challenge. But again, come back to us as often as needed. And I hope that you have a good impression now from the type of resources that you can receive and hopefully find elsewhere as well. We can't be the only community that's doing this. And you can always, be that difference maker in any community that you are going to as well. So if anyone has any questions, please do put those in the chat. We are going to be sending a recording of this video, and you are welcome to reach out to Stacy or Meredith or the team here at the PRC. We are all here to support you in any way that we can. So it looks like at this point, you may have answered all the questions, Stacy. I know we had one that Meredith had some direct messages with, and again, that's how quickly we're on things. If you raise a question, we are on it. You've got that real-time support, and we hope you'll take advantage of that. So is there anything else you wanted to share, Stacy?
No, that's it. I just want to say I'm appreciative to Fairfax County Public Schools for taking the time to make this video available to all staff, faculty, as well as parents out there. And again, this life is not easy. It is not for the weak. So, but you don't have to do it alone. We're in this together, and it takes a village. I really believe that, to help military kids. So thank you guys very much for being with us.
Thank you. We welcome your feedback. I am pasting a link to our evaluation for those who would like to give input or requests for future webinars. We do hope you'll check out the previous webinars from Stacy and others on our YouTube channel. And again, taking care of your mental health, reaching out for support, looking out for your kids, getting them connected to the community. It's worth all the work and effort, and we thank you for your sacrifice and service. So